Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Business First Creatives podcast. Today, I am chatting with my fellow mastermind gal, Selina Johnson. Selina, welcome to the podcast. How are you this afternoon?
I am super happy and buzzed to be here. Can't wait to get started.
Yeah. So, Selena's area of expertise is teams. We are going to be talking all about teams today, why you should have one, how you can sufficiently delegate. I feel like this is a conversation that everyone needs to have. So, Selena, first, what are the keys to having successful team delegation? Like, if you had to tell someone this is the number one thing that you should pay attention to in order to delegate to your team and retain your team, like, what's the high level thing that everyone should pay attention to?
I think we need to take a step back and look at that. Delegation is actually more important than the hiring part. People often
Okay.
focus on hiring and getting that person in, and then there's little to no time spent on onboarding and delegating, and that's when that hiring and firing cycle starts. So that's the first thing I like to say, is that you need to have the time capacity and know exactly what you're hiring this person for before you bring them in the business. And once you have them, it's then developing and retaining that person through the delegation piece. So I would say through the system that I created, it's all about communication, commanding, cultivating, and then also getting your time back, claiming your time back. So those are the key areas that I would focus on.
So, Selena, you mean I can't just hire someone and give them the keys to the kingdom and just walk away? That's not how it works?
I'm sorry, but a magic unicorn does not exist, I'm afraid. It would be great though, wouldn't it, if we could just click our fingers and they do everything for us. But unfortunately not, no.
So what is two things that someone could do to have a successful onboarding period? Like, I'm imagining that, like, if I was going to hire someone and bring them on my business, that there has to be like a period where I am teaching them about my business rather than just throwing them into the wolves. But I have actually only hired two people inside of my business, and both of them were magical unicorns, I will say. So when it comes to I would say efficient onboarding, I don't think I did that well. So I'm going to listen to you, the expert. What is it that we should do in order to have a successful onboarding of, let's say, our first hire? Because a lot of the people in my audience are solopreneurs. They are doing everything by themselves right now. And so for most of them, when they hire the first time, that's when they're going to be doing after they listen to this episode.
What I love to do is create a 90-day success plan. So that's based off the job description. And we're taking 5 key areas that we want them to do within this role and then mapping that out of how they're going to do it within the 90 days. So I'll break it into 3 sections: 30 days, the first 30, the next 60, and the next 90. So 30, 30, 30. And then within each of those 30-day brackets, I'll be giving them a specific job to do, a specific project to do. It could be one big project, it could be multiple of small things together. And it will be specific about, this is what we expect you to be at, what level you expect it to be at the end of the 30 days. So then you can get to see, are they actually reaching that level? Are they struggling? Do they need extra support? Do we need to retrain them? And then when you get to the end of the 90 days, you'll then realize, well, is this the right person, or do I need to move them because they're not quite hitting the mark? If you don't create this plan, what tends to happen is that they're just left to freedom to do what they think needs doing. And it can steer them in the wrong direction where they're just assuming that's the right thing. So we're giving them that clarity of, these are the guardrails, this is what we need you to do. And then giving them the opportunity to step up to the bar and reach those expectations. So that's the first part. The second step before is also to create a schedule for the first week before they actually start and issue it to them so they know what their week's going to look like ahead of time.
Yeah. I feel like one of the things that people really miss the mark on, I mean, with your first hire, with your second hire, just in general. First of all, the people that you're hiring are not mind readers. So I feel like people really struggle to effectively communicate their expectations. And then when the person that they've hired doesn't meet their expectations, they really struggle to communicate that to the hire. Like, I know in the case of photographers, if you are going to look for an editor, which is very different than hiring somebody internally, but I feel like this is like the first hire that a lot of photographers do, is they will hire an editor and they will, try to efficiently tell them how they edit, the expectations of the session. But then when they get it back and it's not perfect, it's not ready to deliver to the client, they tend to redo it themselves instead of taking the time to communicate what was lacking in their first attempt and giving them the opportunity to, if you will, fix it. Because like you said, those magical unicorns don't exist. You are not going to be able to hand someone a task, even if you have done a really great job of like talking about how you would do it and expectations. There is always going to be a learning curve. And so I really like the idea of this 90-day plan, because this gives you the opportunity to give the new hire the chance to do the task, learn, get feedback, and then do it again. I think if we all come into hiring with that expectation of it will not be perfect, you will have to give feedback and allow your hire the opportunity to absorb that feedback and implement it. That's when you have a really good relationship with your hire. And I feel like that's where you can really maximize on your return on investment.
Absolutely. We need to get comfortable being uncomfortable, especially when it comes to bringing people in. Communication is such an important piece of the block of being an entrepreneur and being the owner of your business. And you are going to have difficult conversations with people. And it's just start that phase. So if there are things that you're noticing that you're concerned about, or things are not done in the correct way, yes, it's easier sometimes to do it yourself. But if you take, okay, that's taken me 30 minutes out of my day. If you track 30 minutes out of 100 times you've done it this year, That's a lot of hours. That's a lot of time that you could be spending somewhere else in the business to make you more money. So you're leaking money by not delegating. And the Gallup survey shows that people who delegate correctly and effectively have a 33% increase in revenue.
Oh,
that is a huge amount.
Statistic.
Yeah, it's a huge amount. So if you're not doing it correctly, if you are not working in your zone of genius, if you are holding on to all the reins, if you are the bottleneck in your business, then you are not delegating effectively. You need to utilize the people in your team correctly to be able to elevate yourself into your zone of genius and not be the COE, the chief of everything.
Yeah, recently, and I'm really sad right now that I can't actually remember what the task was, but I want to say it was about a month ago. I had handed off a task to my VA, and granted, you by this time I think she'd been in my business for like 6 or 7 months, but she did something, and when I got it back, I was like, no, I don't like this. This is not what I wanted. And when I thought about it, it would have taken me about 30 minutes to just do it, right? But it took me an hour to make multiple videos and explain, what the issue was and what I wanted her to do differently. And then I sent it back to her. And of course, it took her another 30 minutes to an hour, I'm sure, to like implement the feedback and redo it. And at that point, like I almost went back to, well, let me just do it myself. And then I stopped and I put on my delegation hat and I was like, no, because then she's going to do it again incorrectly the next time that I hand her this task. And if I can just take this hour now to like lay out everything and explain what it was that I wanted her to do instead of what she submitted, I mean, I'm never going to have to do that to her again, because I will say my virtual assistant picks up things so well. I mean, once I explain it one time, she's got it. Like she never makes the same mistake twice, if you will. But I do think that I did really have to learn how to effectively communicate that. Because again, I mean, I'm real efficient. Sometimes it would just be easier to just jump in and do it myself and just worry about the next one later. But you have to make sure that you have the time, because otherwise, if I didn't tell her that she did it wrong, she wouldn't know. So she would think that she knocked it out of the park. And then when I gave it to her for another client, she would do the exact same thing over, right?
Exactly. If you look at something in sports, that they are training constantly, they're perfecting themselves, they're perfecting their skill set. And it's the same when it comes to working with a team member. They're not going to be perfect. There's not this magic unicorn that's going to appear in your office. So you need to be able to perfect them to get them to that maximum optimum. And I talk about getting your circle, your individual team member circle up to 80, 100%. They may come to you at 50%, and it's you guiding them from 50 up to 100% to get them to that high performance. And that's by you being a leader, leading and managing them and talking to them, having that open communication and feeling comfortable to be able to talk to them, and vice versa, they speaking to you, so that they can speak about stuff that they want support on, but you can also feed back to them when things are not quite right. Because if you don't speak to them and explain that this task wasn't quite where I expected it to be. How do they know where the standard bar is? How do they know where expectations are met? So it's really key that you are communicating with them. And I like to do it by either voice note or doing a Loom recording rather than text, because sometimes text, when you Slack, it can come across as like condescending, or you're still in that frustration mode, right? So the tone may not be seen right. So I like to actually show them, hey, you've done this task for me. I noticed that you sent out the wrong link in this email. That seems to be a common one. Can you just make sure that I'm just showing it to you now? Can you just do this and double check the link each time next time? Because we want to make sure we're in launch mode. We just want to make sure everything's going right. Don't forget to check the onboarding or this specific folder in the Google Drive. So you're giving them, I've noticed that this has gone wrong, just flagging it with you. Can you just go through the process again just to make sure you've got it right? And if you have any questions, feel free to come back to me. And they'll be, oh, right, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I had done that. So again, you're having that casual relationship with them. It doesn't feel like they're getting whipped and told off, but it's just making them aware that something's gone wrong, and can you make sure you don't avoid doing that the next time?
Yeah, and I feel like what we're going to progress into now is if you have more than one team member. Because I feel like if you have one team member, it doesn't really matter how you communicate it to them or where you communicate it to them, because it's just the one person. But as your team grows, it becomes even more important to have those SOPs in place, to have everything centralized so that everybody on your team has access to the same, information, the same feedback that you've perhaps given before, so that when you're bringing on another team member, they don't make those same kinds of mistakes that your first hire did if they're doing the exact same kind of tasks for you.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know what your opinion is of this, because some people will say, do the SOPs before someone comes in place, and others will say you can do it while they're in place. And I'm kind of thinking from people are quite busy and maybe don't have all the time to create the SOPs. So I say, okay, look at what is it that you want them to do. Can you actually record yourself doing it? So you spoke about the editor. Can you record yourself doing that task? So they have a video recording before they start of what it should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first step. And then they could probably update that and create a Word document of it, because some people will learn different ways. Some people like video tutorials, some will like images, some will like text. It's a variety of different ways. I know that when I buy something from IKEA and I get the diagrams, half the time it never comes out like what they say it should, right? So I prefer video, YouTube videos, because I know straight away I'm following step by step. So it's just, first of all, getting to understand how your team works and how they understand instructions. And then also you being clear on the process yourself, because that can also be a bottleneck if you're bringing someone into the team and you're asking them to do something, but you're not quite sure of the process. But if they can then figure it out for you, but then you need to be clear of what the outcome is, because that can be an issue with delegation, is that you're hiring someone to do a role, but there's no kind of subheadings of what that responsibility is or what the outcome is of that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree, Selina. And I don't think that I really understood the importance of communicating between team members until I realized that my podcast manager and my virtual assistant were going to be working on basically the same project, the same tasks, but they were each going to have a different role. And so making sure that I communicated to my podcast manager what her role was, and then communicating to my virtual assistant, but also making sure that they can communicate with each other, because this podcast is one of the things in my business that my team handles. I mean, I'm the one that emailed and invited you and looked at the scheduler and did all that. But once we record this episode, everything gets turned over to my team. Podcast manager gets a notification after I upload this into the script so that she can edit it. And then when she's edited, uploaded it to Buzzsprout, made it ready for public consumption, she notifies my virtual assistant, who then goes in and makes all the social media clips and writes the email and does all this. So my virtual assistant's tasks are dependent on my podcast manager doing her job and making sure that all of the clips are selected and all that. So it is managing people. It's not just managing tasks. It's also managing people and how they interact with each other, because there were a few times when my podcast manager forgot to select the clips for my virtual assistant to make for the social media. So like the first time that it happened, I just ran in and selected them because I didn't want to have to wait for her to do it. And I just sent her a note and I'm like, hey, on this podcast, you forgot to select the clips for Sarah. Can you just make sure that you do that next time? And she was like, oh, absolutely. But like, we're all communicating about the podcast in Airtable, which I know seems like a really weird place to manage like team tasks, but it's the best tool that I found for myself for the kinds of things that they're each doing for the podcast.
I love that. And that's a valid point, that when you've got so many people coming in, it's what's the best way to communicate with your team that works for your business. There's multiple different project management tools out there. It's figuring out how you like to do it, how creatively, visually you like to see things, and then working out a platform that works best. I've used Asana, which I really prefer. And what you spoke about really is what we used to do as well. So when we were launching something, say for example, a masterclass, and there'll be different team members. So there'll be a graphic designer, there'll be a social media person, there'll be a tech VA, there may be someone doing some copywriting. So there could be 4 people. So what I would do is, initially, if this was the first time I was doing this masterclass, this project, I would bring them all together on a Zoom call and say, this is what the masterclass is about. This is the aim of and then we're going to be launching this project at the end. These are the key areas within Asana that I need you to do. Is there anything that I've missed? Because often we may forget all the different touch points and stuff that needs to happen.
Yes.
And then we've added in the deadline dates. We've added in the specifics of what needs to be done, the deadline dates, who's responsible, and the priority. Is it a high, low, medium? Because often team members do things based on what they think needs doing first, or the easiest thing first, but it's not based on the business needs. So that's quite key to make sure you've elaborated on the priority of each task. And then it's also being clear on, okay, like you mentioned, that this needs to be done before someone else can do that. And then also being clear on, okay, is it actually going to take you a day to do? Because me being someone who has high expectations and wants things done like yesterday, could say, oh yeah, you can do that in a day. Yeah, you can do that in a day. When in actual fact, it might take them 2 days or 3 days because they've got other things on. Or they feel like this other project that they're working on is more important within that client. So we can say, okay, drop that for now. The launch is more of a priority. So it's having those conversations and creating a whole outline in a bird's eye view on one screen. I like to have it all on one screen. So I've got a section that says admin's responsibility and the tasks. Then I have a copywriter's responsibility and all those tasks. So I can see from one screen all the things that's happening. As they tick them off, they disappear. They don't disappear. They're still there, but they're grayed out. So I know that it's been done. And then I can see what's left to do, what's outstanding, what hasn't been done on time. And then we can work through that. And then in between then, we're having voice notes or Slack conversations just to talk through what's outstanding or if they've got any key questions. So once you rinse and repeat that launch, you may not need to then jump on a big Zoom call and have that team conversation again because everyone's done it previously. You can just duplicate that board and then run again and do it over again and then learn from the lessons from the previous launch and then update those tasks and implement different things.
Absolutely. And I will say one thing that I want to encourage everyone in the listening audience is give yourself more time than you think it's going to take. Like if you think it's going to take someone on your team 2 days to do something, the first time that you assign it, give them 4 because you just don't know how long a particular task is going to take until someone does it. And one of the things that I'm really happy about where we are now is we are so far ahead that, like, let's say my virtual assistant's kid gets sick or, one of my team members gets sick. We now have enough time in our schedule to where if they end up, on bed rest or whatever for a couple days, it really doesn't affect our schedule because we have put so much buffer time in. Like, I think my podcast manager right now is 3 weeks ahead on editing the podcast episodes, and my virtual assistant is like almost 2 weeks ahead in terms of scheduling and creating all the social media assets. And so that was one of the things that I really love because in the beginning, we were doing something on such a tight timeline. My virtual assistant, one of her children got sick and she let me know, immediately. She's like, okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this by Wednesday. And I was like, no worries. I have time on my schedule today. I will do it. But then after that, we all looked at our schedules and we were like, okay, how can we implement a little bit more buffer time so that if, one of us is out, one of us is sick, whatever, we have the space in order for us to, work on things in a slower timeline and still get it done by either our initial deadline or like that final deadline where you're like, no, this has to be done so that we can launch it, put it out, whatever the end task is. But the other thing that I liked what you said, Selina, was about priorities. And so I think it's important to think about the fact that priorities can change. Like you may have delegated, task one, task two, task three, but then all of a sudden something changes in your marketing calendar. You have a new collaboration that you're really excited about, but it forces you to like put task number 4 ahead of the 3 that you have already assigned to a team member. And so it is important that we have that kind of flexibility and a way to communicate, okay, no, this is the priority now. Like, I know I told you that it was 1, 2, and 3, and you're doing a great job on those, but like, I need this done in the next 48 hours. So can you put this, at top of mind until it's done?
Yes, exactly. And it's all about being proactive rather than being reactive, is what I got from this conversation. Because you put yourself in a better place for yourself and your team. I see so many team members that are over capacity because they're constantly running at 200 miles an hour. So being in a place where you can be more prepared and thinking ahead comes from you being able to plan as a great leader, but also working with your team to say, these are the projects I have coming up. How can we get them into the business and map them out to make sure that we're able to all fulfill them in a quality way? And that's a great place that you're in right now.
So actually, that brings me to another question, Selina, because everybody in my business is external. Like my virtual assistant actually owns her own virtual assistant agency, but she's my personal virtual assistant. And my podcast manager owns her own agency to edit the podcast. But is there anything that's different about the conversation that we've been having based on whether or not your team member is an internal member of your business or they are someone that you are outsourcing to that perhaps owns their own business? Like, is there anything that we should maybe warn people about or that we should say is slightly different about anything that we've discussed thus far?
That's a good question. I think that I like working with other business owners because they're running their own business, so they get it. I find that when I work with entrepreneurs in my business, they relate to me quite easily because they understand what I'm trying to succeed in, or they get the struggle and the ups and downs of entrepreneurial life. So it's easy for them to integrate into your business because they have a more of a relationship of understanding where I'm at. So that's what I like about them. But I don't know if there's a different, I don't know if there is, I don't know. I'm struggling with that one to
Well,
think
I'm going to
of.
hop in. I'm going to hop in with something, Selina, because one thing that I realized when we were talking about tools is my virtual assistant, their company uses Asana. And I know you said that's what you use, but internally, I actually use ClickUp. And so I
Okay,
feel
right.
like, if my company uses one thing and I'm hiring you and your company uses another, like, how do you have that conversation about which tool you're going to use? Because in my case, we use Asana when I am communicating things that, like new tasks that I need my virtual assistant or someone on her team to complete. They are managing like my tasks that I'm assigning them inside of Asana for themselves. But then the individual things, like the actual subtasks of like creating the podcast episodes, all of that kind of stuff, I can do that in ClickUp. And she's going in and marking things complete when she does it for a Dubsado setup or she does something related to the podcast. But then overall for their tracking and communication, they are marking something complete inside of Asana. So we're actually using 2 different tools, but the way that we're using them is slightly different. And I just didn't know if that was something that we should highlight because I mean, I'm easy. I was an Asana user before I was a ClickUp user. So I think part of my, oh yeah, I'll just use Asana for your part was that I was comfortable with Asana. I don't know if someone else, if there's something that your business does that's slightly different than the outsourcing, like how you should communicate. Okay, that's great that you use this, but like in my business, we have to use this.
I would first look at making notes of if there's been any concerns over the past months of issues with using two. So if you've noticed anything, write those issues down so you've got it to remember. And then go to them and say, hey, I've noticed that we've been using these 2 platforms for this period of time. And then the ball's been dropped where it's caused a lot of challenges within the business. We've missed projects, deadlines, or we've missed key information that we needed to supply clients with. And these are the issues that's happening. can you see if you can fix the issue within 2 weeks? If not, if it's no improvement in the level of service, then we need to migrate to one platform. That's
Yeah.
the way I would address it.
And I feel like that's something that people should be exploring in this 90 days. I mean, of course, before you hire someone, you should figure out how they are communicating internally. You should always make sure that someone that you're bringing on your team is either familiar with the tools that you are already using in your business or that they have a willingness to learn. And I do want to say that, I mean, that's on you. If like I'm using ClickUp and I'm bringing somebody onto my team that doesn't know how to use ClickUp, like I feel like that's part of what I should be paying her to do is learn how ClickUp works, but also how I'm specifically using it in my business. I don't feel like that's something that I should delegate to them that, you know, you do it on your own time. I feel like that should be part of like the paid onboarding training process. How do you feel about that?
Yes, absolutely. Because you're hiring them to do a specific task. They probably know other platforms already, so it's probably not going to take them that long to figure it out anyway with the way that you work with it. And I find that you're leveling them up to be a better serving your business. So why
Mhm.
not pay them for that time?
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like this is a good opportunity for us to talk about the free resource that you have for the listening audience. You have a quiz that's going to give us our team leadership score, which I'm sorry, guys, I haven't taken the quiz before we started recording, but I'm going to take it the moment that we hit stop. But tell me about the quiz and tell me what someone is going to get from their results.
So yeah, I created this quiz based on I Love My Team method because I noticed there was a lot of business owners who thought that there was X going wrong in their business when it was actually deep rooted in Y and Z. So I created this so you can get a full overview of the current blind spots that happen in your business
Mhm.
and provide you with actionable steps of how to improve it. So this scorecard is going to go through 5 different areas: communicate, command, cultivate, clarify, and claim. And then you're going to get a
Nice.
report that's going to show you out of 100% what you scored. And it's going to give you like a traffic light result as well. So you're going to see what needs immediate attention, what needs further development, and what is in your excellent and proficient area. And then I'm going to give you some bullet points of what exactly you can do within those 5 pillars to improve your leadership, your team leadership.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like the overall thing that I've gotten from our conversation is that you know, a lot of us find like it's a high threshold for us to bring someone into our business to start. But then when you bring that person in, you have to have a plan from the beginning to make it successful. You want to give them as much training, as much expectations, as much as you can to make sure that not only that you're a good fit for them, but that they're a good fit for you. And so like retention is the name of the game. What's that phrase, Selena, where you hire fast and fire slow? Is that the one?
Yes. Yes. And so I feel that it's a great place to be in your business when you're bringing these people on, but it's also, like you said, about how to retain them and develop them and spending that time, having that time capacity. So if you don't have the time in your business, it's not probably the best time to bring somebody in. It's like when you are working with somebody junior in your business and your business is at a high level, you wouldn't expect them just to be able to jump from what a lot of clients say to me is I'm trying to 10x my business, but they've got a 2x person. So you can't bridge that gap quite quickly, right? So you need to make
Mhm.
sure that if you're bringing in someone at a junior level and your business is at 10x and they're a 2x, you need to have the time capacity to work with them to get them up a few notches, right? Otherwise, it's not fair that you bring them in to sink or swim in the business.
And I want to just tell everyone, like, how Selena and I came to decide to record this particular podcast episode was I was telling her about the time that I lost my vision, which, for those of you that don't know, back in 2016, I lost my vision completely for about 6 weeks. And I mean, how can a photographer do their job when they can't? I mean, they're legally blind. And so, one of the best things about bringing team members on is so that if you know, have some issues that you're working through, you have other team members to kind of pick up the slack and keep your business moving. And so, you know, team members can be thought of as like your plan B. Like if you are incapacitated and you can't do this, have you set up sufficient SOPs? Do you have team members that can pick up the slack while you are unable to do the services as you've been doing them previously?
Yes, it's a really difficult one because as a photographer, you're used to doing everything yourself. and you hold on to everything because you have a passion for it, that creativity. And then it's bringing this person in that may be client facing or doing stuff that's going to affect the reputation of your business. So it can be really difficult to entrust in someone to come into your business. Are they going to do it as well as I can do it? Can I trust them? It's easier just to do it myself. It's easier for me to do it than to explain it to somebody else to do it. No one can do it like me. So they're the type of things that we constantly go around in our mind. But let me give you an example of like when I first started my business, within the first 5 months, I hired a blog writer because I was creating these amazing blogs and it was getting great traction, but I couldn't keep up with it. So then I hired this blog writer to come into my business. I delegated that out to her. I gave her the specific titles and she created the content. I reviewed each of them for the first 6 weeks, gave her feedback on Loom. And then it got to the point where she perfected it that I didn't need to read them anymore. I felt comfortable that it's been published. Oh, great. But I didn't need to read it. But it was out there and it was from me. But she was representing me and she understood my mission, my values, and my tone of voice. Everything was on point. And because I delegated that out, I then became number 1 on Google for Pacific search term. I was on page 1. But if I didn't get somebody else into my business to support me, I wouldn't have got that opportunity to get more people coming into my business. So it's the same as a photographer in your business. Looking at, you're talented, you've got this great, amazing talent with what you do for clients. But what happens if, touch wood, it doesn't, but what happens if you need to take time out of your business for not just 2 weeks, but 2 months, 6 months? What's going to happen to your business? Will it suffer or will it die? What plans can we put in today to support your business as you're growing your business? Also, I noticed that a lot of these type of businesses, it's just reliant on them. So how do you then expand and scale your business if it's just you? So if you wanted to multiply that, if you weren't looking at the course avenue, but you're looking at in-person photography for weddings, children, celebrations, it's just you taking those pictures. What if you wanted to bring in another photographer? You then need to have that, be able to be good at leading to then bring somebody else into the business. So it's still looking at how can you clone yourself, but bringing in somebody who's at the same level of standard as you, has the ambition, has the drive, and is willing to go that extra mile in your business.
Selina, I love that you said that. And back on episode 40, I interviewed a fellow photographer, Jill Smith, who did that. Like, she felt like she was getting so much business in her area that she wanted to bring on associate shooters in order to do that. And she does it a little different than what I say the typical photographer does, because most photographers would take on more shooting, but delegate all of the after shoot tasks, like the editing, the gallery creation, all of that kind of thing. But Jill did the opposite. She brought on associate shooters in order to photograph more families. And then she actually handled the editing and the creating the galleries on her end. So both ways work, guys. And that's episode 40. And I am going to link it in the show notes in case you are interested.
That's really smart. I like that idea because, again, it's bringing somebody else out to expand your business. I would hate it if someone contacted me and I said, "I'm sorry, I can't do it because I've got something else on that date." So it's finding ways to, if you're in demand, how can you support those people? What else can you be doing?
Yes, absolutely. Selina, we have talked about so much goodness, and I know that the listening audience is going to want to come find you. So tell everyone where they can find you on the internet.
So you can go and get my quiz at selinajohnson.com/quiz. And then you can find me on Instagram at I am Selina Johnson.
I am Selina Johnson. So my Instagram is Colie James. I did seriously think of changing it to I am Colie James or the Colie James. I mean, you know, it just puts a little emphasis before the name. But Selina, it has been a pleasure talking with you about all things delegation. Everyone, that's it for this episode. See you next time.